Go.
Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back, GTS. It's been a little while since we've done a video, but we're getting back into it. I've got a new girl that's helping me out with the German part, so we're going to have hopefully everything in English and in German. But we're going to start today with something quite simple, just a stretch that I use quite a bit for the lower leg really. I think it was probably created for the Rectus Femoris, which is the muscle that goes from basically below your knee all the way to above your hip. But when you really add some torque and some lengthening and some really deep stretching, I think it gets a lot more. So with enough being said, I'll kind of just drop down and show with the stress that we do go into. I think everybody's probably familiar, I hope. If not, it's not a problem. With this stretch here, where people take, oh, that's terrible. The left leg, left arm, and just kind of say it like this. This is a nice stretch to get your quad, but once you get a bit of a range, decent flexibility, I don't really feel anything here. So I've kind of stolen this from Kit, I forget his last name, but he's a really good physio out of Australia. I got his name off of Kelly Stark's mobility blog website, and the guy's got some really creative ways to basically just increase the intensity of a stretch. So what we're going to do here is we're first going to drop our hip a little bit back and our foot a little bit forward. And personally, I like to put my hands both on the inside, and as you're going to see here, I'm just going to drop my hip down to the ground. So I'm going from basically a straight position, dropping my hip into the ground, which is going to first start stretching my hip flexors, but it's also going to be pushing my femur a bit forward, which is going to start stretching some of the ligaments that are attaching my femur to my pelvis, and also that deep capsule that basically holds my leg into its socket, if you will. So I'm just going to kind of hold this stretch here. And as you're going to feel, maybe, mine is a bit tight on the inside, some people's are going to be a bit tight on the outside, some people might just be completely limber. But personally what I like to do is I like to rotate a little bit myself and really push deep in here, because once I get into my groin and that part of my capsule, it gets actually a bit painful. So the pain we can work with a rumble roller and a ball to kind of do some myofascial release. That's been on some other videos we've discussed. Right now we're just kind of focused on the stretch. But for the people that are okay on the inside of the groin, you can also investigate the lateral side, the outside, and you can kind of train yourself in here. And just kind of keep pushing a little bit deep, or keep pushing deeper, sorry. You're also able, if you would like, to take that knee and kind of drive it into the ground for about 5 seconds to get that PNF style stretch. And then relax that, and then just see if you can pull any more. In the real doozy, if you will, comes right now. What we're going to do is, instead of taking our left arm to grab our left leg, we're going to take our right arm and grab our left leg. This adds a nice little torque and rotation into the stretch that makes it a lot more painful, but a lot more effective. So let's see if I can just kick my leg up here real quick. First couple times you try this, you might get a little bit of cramp in your left hamstring. Don't worry about that, that's a bit normal. You're a bit better at it. And here, again, I'm not keeping my hip in a neutral position. I'm really trying to push it towards the ground, so I get that stretch both in the hip flexor, but also in the beginning part, if you will, of my rectus femoris. And again here, I can also begin to rotate a little bit. I can move my hand out, and whoops, hopefully the mat won't turn on you, and start getting that lateral side where I start stretching into that IT band some, and get that iliacs a little bit more when I drop that hip even closer. Or I can go into and start getting some of those groin muscles and opening up that inside of my leg, if you will, medial capsule with my hips. Try to keep the scientific terminology to a minimum here. And then here you can also do a motion where you're kicking your foot to the ground. You would hold it for about 5 to 10 seconds. This would be the contraction part of a PNF stretch. So I'll go ahead and just kick here. I don't know if you can tell I'm kicking, but... And then I'm going to relax. And then I'm going to, at the same time, drop my hip down and try to squeeze my foot closer to my butt. And really just try to continue to drop my hip into the ground and get my foot closer to my butt. You're going to probably feel it pretty deep right in here, so it's not really going to take too much explanation where you should feel it, because most people are quite tight on this. If that's not possible, where you can't grab your foot, like my mother had trouble with this one, I just told her to start here, grab her foot, and then just start leaning forward a bit if her hands can't go on the ground. So you can use a ball, you can use a chair if you lose your balance a little bit, but there's really no wrong way to do it. I think I mentioned, at the end, also sometimes we like to bounce a little bit. It's similar to ballistic stretching. I don't really like to call this ballistic stretching because we're not really working on the muscle here while we do this. We're doing more bounce here at the end of the motion to kind of just force that tight capsule and that fascia to kind of open up here a little bit. So this is something I would probably do after I've already done the stretch and the contraction, the P and F stretching of the muscles, just because I know then they're lengthened to probably their maximal limit, and then I can just push a little bit on that capsule. Just kind of dropping that hip lower to the ground. Some people call this oscillations. That's a bit of a fancy term. I just like to say kind of just push at that range of motion, bounce a little bit at the end. And you'll notice your range of motion also gets a little bit better and your hip will get a little bit looser. So, first video in a little while, might be a bit choppy. I'll get better by next week, I promise. But I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Any questions, feel free to post.